104.7 The Cave. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream episode 179 this week was my pick. It's Freaknik on Hulu, the story of a party that has been going on since the early 80s in
Epic
Atlanta,
street
Georgia.
party.
Before we get into this, I just want to make it known that I definitely feel a little uncomfortable being a white dude talking about an all-black spring break festival that's been going on in Atlanta for 40 years.
I love it.
So we're going to do our best to dive into it, but it was a very, very interesting story, to say the least. Like I mentioned in the last week at the end of the episode, I would love to go to something like this. I mean, that's one of the things I love about going on vacation. And
I love crazy madness too.
I love that part of it, just being in the center of it. But I just love going to different places and experiencing like different cultures in what they do. Like I mentioned with Colombia, I would love to go to that country, Bogota, Medellin, whatever. But at the same time, I'm scared to death that I'd be kidnapped.
Nowadays, a little sketchy. There's some
if I knew someone that would
ill towards Americans in a lot of countries.
It's just opportunity. I mean, you're talking about people that are literally like hand to mouth trying to survive every day, and then all of a sudden, a guy like me comes there, like, oh, there's a tip.
I'm a big radio star.
Oh, I wouldn't say that at all. I'd be dressing down, like I do now. But yeah, I would love to be there, but it's one of those situations where I feel like I have to know someone or I need to pass, right? And I don't know.
You'd have to go with somebody who has ends.
Yeah, someone that's like, oh, he's
vouch for
cool.
you. No,
this guy's cool.
He's cool.
This guy's cool. This guy's cool. So if you're listening and you do, or you're planning on going to Freaknik next year, and you want to bring me or Jay with you, please, we'd love to go, and we will have a blast. And we'll
throw my hair out massive.
We will stay out of your way, and we will just observe and enjoy. Either way. This festival started in Atlanta in 1983. A bunch of college kids just
threw a party.
Just decided, we throw badass parties. Everyone's leaving town. They weren't really feeling the Gulf Shores vibe or going down to
Florida couldn't afford it, or couldn't afford to go on vacation.
Some couldn't. It's tough. I could never afford it. We'll talk about our spring break stuff later on down the road. But essentially, it was just a picnic, right? And just come hang out at this park. And it was big, and it got bigger.
And got bigger.
I thought it was really cool to see the four of them that kind of
started it, right?
Yeah. But it's kind of one of those deals where it's like anything that you do in college that continues on after you leave. It completely changes.
Takes a life of its own.
Oh my God. And you don't have any control of it.
And then gets too crazy. Yeah.
And now it's at a whole. I love the beginning where they show like the old videos, like the camcorder videos, and then they show today.
Yeah.
And like the juxtaposition of how different it is. And then they show I can't remember which one. It wasn't 21 Savage. It was one of the older dudes. And I think it was like Too Short. And he goes, man, them kids don't know nothing about Freaknik. And that was like,
And you got Luke from Two Live Crew.
Well. But at the same time, it's relative. It's relative to what was cool when you were a kid and how far you go versus
different generations, man.
And they didn't have social media back then. They just had
how did this word of mouth spread this thing?
That's good. Well, that's a good idea. While Jay clears his throat.
God, rough start this morning.
I don't know what he did this weekend. It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream, episode 179, Freaknik, the documentary on Hulu, which is pretty cool. Now, the name, pretty easy. They wanted to have the word freak in there.
They want to have picnic.
So Freaknik. Change the C to a K.
I love it.
There you got it. I'm in. It's pretty incredible. The fact that it was, inspired by They Freak, Say Chic.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool, but it would definitely take on a mind of its own. Before we continue on, let's talk about our spring break experiences. Did you ever do any? I know you didn't go to college, right?
No,
you didn't go to college. So
you never did any kind of spring break.
I mean, your life essentially
is one big spring break.
Living in Hawaii for a long time.
Yeah,
moving back to LA for a long time.
Being in rock band, if your life is a spring break.
You never really stopped having.
I'm still having spring break every year.
Life is the endless summer.
It is, yeah.
Until winter comes along, and then you just see him kind of moping around.
Yeah, but it's all right. The sun shall shine again, baby.
Skin starts to pale, and we almost lose him. We get like this close. He's like 10% depleted. He's got nothing. Then all of a sudden, the birds start singing.
We are.
he's renewed.
We are a month away from show season in
I
full
know.
effect.
When
So
Jay- and then when-
we're back, baby. We're back.
And then now I get from a tired under sun Jay to a overworked hungover Jay.
Overstimulated.
It's
Jay.
one or the other.
Yeah.
Me personally, I was in the category of, well, two things. I guess my life also has been a long spring break, especially during that time period of my life. But also, I was in the broke. I paid for everything. I paid for my own school. I paid to live. I paid rent. I worked my butt off through college. Also partying my ass off too. So I didn't have any money to go anywhere. My parents didn't send me anywhere on spring break. I didn't go to Daytona Beach. I didn't go.
Yeah, I've never
shows.
done that kind of stuff.
I've been to those places.
I mean, closest thing would be when I lived in New Orleans and Mardi Gras would come to town. That was what I would assume these events would be like.
I would
Mardi Gras in New Orleans, I would assume, is what Freaknik was like that weekend.
Yeah, just completely shutting down the city, and then eventually, like we said earlier, things that start out pretty cool, bad stuff starts to happen.
Well, you start to get riffraff in there, and things get
drugs,
a little out of control.
More booze.
Yeah, different crowd comes in.
Weird,
Outsiders come in.
Lot of
it happens.
Yep. We'll talk about that next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio, Dark Side of the Stream, episode 179, discussing Freaknik on Hulu. So I really loved kind of watching the evolution of this, and over the years it was awesome. Through the 90s it really was, but then it started to get right around the late 80s, early 90s, when School Days came out. They weren't specifically talking about it, but it was definitely very much inspired by the Black culture in Atlanta, especially the college scene in Morehouse and all those other schools, and then what they would do with Freaknik. So that was part of what you definitely know Spike Lee was influenced by that. Once that got put out, and other musicians and rappers and people start talking about it.
And TV show, there was a TV show talked about it.
Different World was talking about it.
It blew up, man.
So it became a destination for a generation of kids that were going to college that were now figuring that, hey, this is a place I think we should go to. And
funny, because I never heard anything about it until this documentary.
Bro, I never heard anything about it either. But again, it's not in our lane. So I get why I've heard. I mean, Atlanta. Have you ever been in Atlanta before? I mean, you were close. You were in New Orleans.
Yeah, people from Atlanta would come down to New Orleans all the time for the
Falcons you're not
games.
Too far.
No, I don't think. I mean, I've probably been to the airport.
Atlanta it's a cool place. It's arguably one of the worst places to drive through in my experience. I can't do driving through Atlanta.
Well, then could you imagine when all these people were there?
Dude, it wouldn't.
Freeways were standstill.
Honestly, like
freeways were standstill.
It's kind of like what we go through here, and this is just a small percentage, right? Like as soon as Memorial Day weekend happens, all the kids are gone. And you got the summer, right? And the summer kind of gives you a little bit of space with all the student element here in town. And then right around late July, early August, it starts to pack up. The kids are everywhere.
I think this town has zero traffic.
Well, it's because you don't live in the middle of town. You don't live around the campus. You don't see it. I see it every year. But again, it's a very, very small percentage. I can't even imagine what that would be like in Atlanta, like literally leading up to spring break. I'd be going.
The city would probably. That's why the city did get involved, because it just becomes to a point.
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, at a certain point, when you've got literally city blocks getting shut down because these people are just hanging out and like want to have a party out here on the street.
Literally, just the streets would look like a parking lot
everywhere.
Insane. People dancing, getting out of their cars. Like
the culture changed too. Like the introduction of like rims and stereo systems and all this stuff when people were wearing and stuff. That was really cool. It was like watching
a time machine.
A time capsule unfold.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool.
Especially for two very white dudes that live in the middle of the country that really have no idea about what anything like that it was like. I'd love to go now, again, with an escort or someone that can make sure that I'm okay.
Just so I mean, because we are cool in those type of environments, but surface value, somebody may make a judgment against us.
Yeah. Riffraffs, like you said, the element riffraff. But anyway, we'll be back with our freaky
Nick views
of
freak view
of this documentary.
Our freak review.
It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio one more time. It is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 179, Freaknik on Hulu. So how many
booties shaking?
Yeah, well,
I said that's what they called it. They didn't. It wasn't
call it
twerking.
man.
It was called booty shaking.
But the funny thing is that it's the same thing.
Thing.
The only difference is the size of the booties have gotten bigger, and that's just because of plastic surgery.
I know you're an aficionado of the butt.
I'm definitely.
In my older age, I've actually become a fan of the butt. So.
I don't know how the hell you weren't before.
No, it was all about breasts for me, but I've become a butt man as well now. Now I look at top and bottom.
Listen, you can't just.
Well, I didn't. It wasn't my thing, but now I enjoy it.
I like all.
So how many big butts do we give this one?
Solid 4. I think it was a great story. I didn't know anything about it.
I'm gonna go 4. It was.
Now I do.
And it was cool just to see, and it's the classic tale. It gets big, gets too big, gets out of control. City gets involved, fights, blows up, and then
like
destroyed, and then it comes back again in a different form with like Woodstock, same thing, Woodstock was awesome. Then they had a crappy Woodstock. Now they have decent Woodstock. Same kind of story. So I liked it.
But that was good. And again, I think Jay and I now for the next year are going to try and convince our significant others that we need to go down to Atlanta
Freaknik and experience it.
Spring break next year.
Jordan would fit in really well down
there.
I know
Jordan would fit
the booty.
That's why I say we probably need an escort for
you.
Would,
yeah. She'd get mobbed on.
Hey, where's your man? As soon as they see you, it's like, oh, come here, buddy. And I'm like, I don't know who that. I don't know who that old ass dude is. I'm with them. I'm with
Jiu-Jitsu, don't fail me now.
Now we know where the training is going to come into play. I've been saying it for years. He's just waiting for someone to call him out on it.
No. It's the worst idea ever. The worst idea.
Either way, your pick next week. What are we watching?
I found an interesting one that's been on my radar for years, and I never clicked it. Finally, I was like, I'm going to click it. I'm warning you now, Mike. It's going to be really cheesy at first. And you have to get through the cheesiness. You have to get through the weird, wacky part of it. But if you do, there's some substance in there. Glitch in the Matrix. It's on Hulu. Are we living in a simulation?
Oh, yeah, okay.
But there's
compelling evidence
there's an area of it that's really, really cool about the guy that wrote all the Blade Runner movies and stuff like that. Very interesting. But there's some weird, wacky weirdos in this thing too.
That wrote hold on.
Blade Runner and what's the Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall, right? This guy claims he got all the ideas for these movies because he saw this.
We will get into this in next week's episode, but I need to correct you first of all. The guy's name, he's a writer, Philip K. Dick.
Yes, that's the guy.
He didn't write Blade Runner. He wrote a story called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
There you go.
Which was the basis for Blade Runner. And then, of course, Total Recall and all that.
A couple other movies, too, I think.
He's done a ton of.
And he says he got all these ideas from seeing The Glitch in the Matrix. He saw all this information there.
Which is also, who knows? Because the dude was heavily influenced by drugs. And we'll get into
Here we go! Next week!
When we discuss whether or not we're in a simulation, you can watch us in a simulation on Facebook Live every Thursday, 9 a.m. or on YouTube. Or you can just listen to us do this as a podcast every week on Thursday, 9 a.m. on our 104.7 The Cave app, or just listen to it live during my show at 9 or Jay's at 6 p.m. Again, I'm Mike the Intern. That's Jay Stevens.
Jay Stevens. Hopefully, this is the right direction. We watch movies,
documentaries,
so
you don't have to. It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.